Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Hesed Sabbath Fellowship at 1631 Ford Parkway, St. Paul, Minnesota. We meet every Sabbath from 11:30 a.m. to sunset, but this week is Passover week. So on the 19th of April, which is Nisan 14, which is Aviv 14, we will be celebrating Passover 5779, 2019. So happy Passover this week. Remember, Yeshua is our Passover lamb. So when we celebrate with the juice of the grape, and we celebrate with the matzah instead of bread this week. So clean your house out for bread, and get rid of anything with leaven in it, because you want to remember the unleavened bread week that Yeshua commands you to keep. And you remember that he was without sin. So you want to keep those types of activities, and you want to be more like Jesus, don't you? Or do you want to celebrate pigs and bunnies and eggs, and he commands you that you're not supposed to eat the pig? You might as well kill a person as an ox, or break a dog's neck as sacrifice a lamb, and offer pig's blood as a grain offering, or bless an idol, or burn ice as burning incense. You've chosen your ways, and you enjoy these disgusting practices from Isaiah 66, which is an end times verse in 66:3, but then continuing on in 66, those who consecrate and purify themselves in order to enter the gardens, then follow the one who is already there, eating pig meat, reptiles, and mice, will be destroyed altogether. Once again, 66 of Isaiah is the end times, people. He ordered them not to offer burnt offerings. This is Antiochus Epiphanes saying this. No ola offerings, no grain offerings, which is a Micah, no wine offerings in the temple. Commanded them to treat Sabbaths and festivals as ordinary workdays. They were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. They were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animals there. That's 1 Maccabees 1. That is a disgusting abomination. So keep that in mind. You can be like Constantine, or you can be like Yeshua. Constantine said, it appears that the churches of Syria and Mesopotamia continues to follow the custom of the Jews and celebrated Easter on the 14th day of the month, whether falling on Sunday or not. All the other churches observe the solemnity on Sunday only, because the 14th day of the month is how we're supposed to calculate Passover. So we're supposed to be on Aviv 14 or Nisan 14, whatever you want to call the month. But you're not supposed to be like Constantine, because he changed everything. He has no faith statement. Follow Yeshua. Remember, this week is unleavened bread, and so we want to remember first fruits, which is the day of resurrection for Yeshua, but it's also going to be like our resurrection day. So you want to celebrate the things that Yeshua did, not the things of Constantine. Today's lesson is going to be on the leper Messiah. This is from Isaiah 53, so please stick with me through the whole thing. This is going to be difficult, because you're going to say, is Joel actually saying that he took on the sin? No, I'll come up with the right answer, but stick with me through the process so you can see what the verses mean. So first of all, the leper Messiah. So this is from the rabbis. They say, what's the name of this Messiah? Shiloh, which is where the tabernacle was, the city of Shiloh, for many, many years until they built Solomon's temple. Okay, so his name should be Shiloh, because until when Shiloh shall come, so we know he's related to Shiloh. But then another rabbi says Yinon, because may his name endure forever. His name continue on, Yinon, as long as the sun, and may men bless themselves by him. Another Hanana. And so there's no favor. So is that the name of the Messiah? Another one is Menachem, which would be because he's a comforter. But the final rabbi says, no, let's cite Isaiah 53:4 and say the leper of the house of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi has said, indeed our illnesses did he bear, and our pains he endured, yet we did esteem him injured, stricken by God, and afflicted. So he's the leper Messiah. He took on our illnesses and our pains, and he endured them for us. So let's look at some of these things so that you can classify the sins, because keep in mind, in the Greek, it's all hamartia, which is sins, and it's all just one big container filled of sins. But in the Hebrew, they're differentiated, okay? There are unintentional sins, which are generally kata, and I include Asham even though it's underneath kata, but kata would be, I'll explain it to you in a little bit. Asham is where you don't know that it occurred, and then you figure it out, but you bring the offering anyway. Did Jesus die for these sins, these unintentional, in the Hebrew, the kata type sins, or intentional sins? Avon is one of those. So keep this in mind so you'll know what these things mean. Those are willful sins. You knew it, you did it, you really didn't even think about it, you just did it because it's willful. Or pasha, that's rebellious. You're being a rebel without a cause. And so did Jesus die for those sins? The word is hamartia again in the Greek, and it isn't really very specific in the New Testament. But in the Old Testament, we know the differences of the sins. And sometimes you could relate to it, but it's generally just written out as hamartia. So these are ritual impurities at times, or sometimes they're actually sins. Obviously, if it's avon or pasha, those are willful sins or rebellious sins. But chata, I'll show you where it really is just impurities, and that's it. It's not a sin. So, two other words you need to know is tumah and tahorah. So, tumah is the bad word. That is where you are ritually impure. It's the opposite of tahara, which is purity, and it's impurity of the body in many cases, or moral impurity, the opposite of kadosh, kedusha, which would be sanctity, known as impurity of the soul. And so keep in mind the word kadosh could be for a temple prostitute or for a temple priest. It can go both directions. But in general, the tumah is the sense of ritual impurity. It's prefixed by the letter lamed, and it's with two in some ways. You'll see that it's an active type of you are becoming unclean or you're becoming clean. And so those are the two different words that you need to be aware of, because it has nothing to do with physical dirt, soil on your body or things like that, or a body smell, say, from working out. It has everything to do with ritual impurity, and we'll prove that out. So let's look at Isaiah 53, 4 through 6 in the Hebrew and show you what's going on. So surely our griefs he has borne and our sorrows carried, and yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God and afflicted. Wow, that's amazing. So that's that leper Messiah area where he took on our illnesses. Okay, then continue. But he was wounded for our pasha. Remember how I mentioned those are rebellious sins, and bruised for our avon sins. Those are willful sins. The chastisement for our peace upon him, and by his stripes are we healed. And we, like sheep, have gone astray, every one to his own way. We have turned to God, and has laid on him the iniquity. There's avon again, willful sins of us all. So these are related to Yeshua in terms of what he took on. Did he take on our sinfulness? We'll talk about it. Stick with me. Don't assume I'm going to go the wrong direction with this, okay? So Micah handles it this way too. This is important during the Yom Kippur time frame. We read about this. And Yeshua. So who? Mika Mocha. So in this case, who is like a God like you? And it's Yeshua, obviously, that pardons our avon sins, our willful sins, and passing over pasha sins, which is rebellious transgression sins, of a remnant of his heritage. Not does he retain forever, his anger is off, and delights in mercy. Chesed, that's the name of our particular fellowship. And he delights in Chesed, obviously. So continuing on in Micah 7:19 through 20, he will again have compassion on us, Rakhamah. And he will subdue our avon sins, and he will cast into the depths of the sea all of our chata. Those are those unintentional sins, and he will give truth, emet, to Jacob, and mercy to Abraham, which you have sworn to our fathers from days of old. So we know that only Yeshua can take care of it, because there are no ritual offerings for intentional sins like avon and pasha. Only the kata word out in the upper left there, those types of sins have offerings for them. So let's run through the offerings that could be made, because I want to argue about this a little bit in terms of, will this ever happen again? Will we see offerings again? So the first one on the list is Ola offerings. Holy burnt, holy to the Lord. It means in some ways ascension. And so the animal is brought, it is ritually bound, its throat is slit, and then it is completely burnt. No one eats this. And so you bring in cattle, sheep, goats, or even birds, depending upon what they have for means. But this is the most important one, and the word Holocaust. So Ola is the Hebrew, Holocaust is the Greek way of saying that, and that is typically found. And so you know what Holocaust means. You know what it means. And there will be more in the end times of a Holocaust. Another one is called a barbecue, but I call it the Zavak Shalamim, the festival peace offering. And so that is an offering designed to be brought to everyone that is ritually pure, so they have to be Tahorah, And so in gratitude for his bounties and mercies. So let's say you take a trip and it was a dangerous trip, you come back and you just want peace. So shalom is in there. You see shalomim, that's peace, that's whole. And so a portion is given to the Kohanim, the rest is eaten by the offerer and his family and other people, all sorts of people. It's a barbecue. And so it's, if you survive a life-threatening crisis or whatever, or you make a vow and you fulfill it, you want to bring in this peace offering. You want to have fun. So this has nothing to do with sacrificing an animal for, say, sins. This has everything to do with just having a barbecue, if people are clean, once again. Minkas. Minkas are generally grain offering, but when you see the first one listed, go back to Genesis and you'll see Cain and Abel offered of the field and of the animal. And it was a heart issue there. It wasn't necessarily the minka of one or the other, because Cain could have brought the best, but he didn't. So just keep that in mind. And by the way, all of these are found in jewfact.org. So that's where I found this list of the offerings, although I kind of know them already. So the last one that I want to cite is the kata sin offering. Mary in Luke 2:22 through 35 really brought in that sin offering. No, she birthed the Messiah, but she had a passage of blood, and so she had to bring something for her unintentional kata offering. So she brought in 2 doves or 2 turtle doves, whatever. Not much, because financially they were broke. So it could be for individuals or communal, and part of this, or the kata, is eaten by the Kohanim. And so Mariam and Joseph didn't have any money. They brought the animals in. She became ritually pure as a result of that, so she could be brought into fellowship with the rest of the community. But the Kohanim got the meal for it. It's life, guys. That's how the kata offers. And then, of course, I forgot about the Asham. So let's pretend I did something wrong. I didn't know about it. Then I go back to that person and I just make this offering, and then you know, it's pointed out, and then I add 20% to it too, because the Asham is eaten by the Kohanim, but I want to give money back to the person that I wronged. 20% plus, you know, so the full amount plus 20%. Okay, so now we move on to Jesus. Why didn't Jesus contract sin, as I cited in Isaiah 53 rather, and I cited in Micah there? And so why didn't he contract sin? So let's figure out why. Did Yeshua's sin, or was he unclean when he touched the little girl when she was raised from the dead? That is corpse contamination. That would require a sacrifice. It would make him unclean. Touch the son of the widow, and he was when he was raised from the dead. Okay, that would make you, once again, corpse contamination would make you unclean. To me, so touch the leper. There you go. That's another. Leprosy is like death to people, because you can't be part of the community. So it's a living death. And so he did touch that guy, and so that should have made him unclean again. So did he sin? Healed the woman with an issue of blood when she touched the tzitzit of his garment. Well, did that make him unclean? Raised Eleazar. He stepped into the cave, or close enough that he would have been considered to May. So did that make him sinful? Okay, so let's discuss the verses so that you know that I'm on your side on this. Indeed, this is what you were called to do, because the Messiah too suffered on your behalf, which is Passover, which is when he dies, and resurrects right after that, leaving an example so that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin. Hamartia is the word there, but I would say probably kata would be the exact word there. Nor was any deceit found on his lips. And that's 1 Peter 2. God put Yeshua forward as the covering for sin through his faithfulness in respect to his bloody sacrificial death. This vindicated God's righteousness, because in his forbearance he had passed over with neither punishment nor remission the sins, probably kata, of people had committed in the past, and it vindicates his righteousness in the present age by showing that he is righteous himself, and is also the one who makes people righteous on the ground of Yeshua's faithfulness. So that's Romans 3. Looks good so far, but we do not have a Cohen Gadol, so that's the head Cohen, the big Cohen, unable to empathize with our weaknesses, since in every respect he was tempted just as we are, the only difference being that he did not sin. Okay, and everyone who has this hope in him continues purifying himself, since God is pure. Everyone who keeps sinning is violating Torah. Indeed, sin is violation of Torah. You know that he appeared in order to take away sins, and that there is no sin in him. That's 1 John 3. And God made the sinless man be a sin offering, kata, on our behalf, so that in union with him we might fully share in God's righteousness. So 2 Corinthians. So right now we can kind of see what's going on, that he is sinless, no doubt about it, but yet he was around sinful people. So how did he stay pure? So let's look one more time at Hebrews 7. But because he lives forever, his position as Cohen does not pass on to someone else, and consequently, he is totally able to deliver those who approach God through him. Since he is alive forever, and thus forever able to intercede on their behalf, this is the kind of Cohen Gadol, the big Cohen, that meets our need, holy, without evil, without stain, set apart from sinners and raised together. So he's kadosh, set apart. He's holy. Then the heavens, and one who does not have the daily necessity, like the other Kohanim, Gadolim, of the offering up sacrifices first for their own sins, and only then for those of the people, because he offered one sacrifice, once and for all, by offering up himself. For the Torah appoints a Kohanim Gadol, the big Kohen, men who have weakness, men that die and could potentially sin. But the text which speaks about the swearing of the oath, a text written later than the Torah, appoints a son who has been brought to the goal forever. So that's Hebrews 7. Interesting. So let's compare it, and it'll make more sense now. Aaron made this golden calf in Exodus 32, and he was not counted as sinful. He was the high priest. So, and Yeshua is greater than Aaron. Also, Aaron came with Mariam against Moses in Numbers 12, and he did not contract leprosy like Mariam did. So it could not touch him because he was the head Cohen. But even more so, Yeshua, because he lives forever as the high priest. So keep in mind, if it works for Aaron, it works even better for Yeshua, and that's why you could almost ask or state it like osmosis. Yeshua is so righteous that he can't be contaminated, because you can't have a high priest running around and inspecting sick people or contaminated people and picking up their contaminations. So there is that protection that God offers the high priest and Yeshua, who is that final, the complete high priest. So we have no offering system right now. So we are all contaminated by dead people or by other filth, we'll say, by swearing and whatever other sins we do. So according to Micah 6:6-8, here's what everybody should do, including the Orthodox Jews. With what can I come before Adonai to bow down before him, before God on high? Should I come before him with burnt offerings, that's an olah, with calves in their first year? Would Adonai take delight in thousands of rams with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Could I give my firstborn to pay for my crimes, my pasha, my rebellious crimes there? The fruit of my body, for the sin, the chata of my soul? Human being, you have already been told what is good, tov, what Adonai demands of you, no more than to act justly, which is mishpat, which is just being a righteous judge of things, love, ahava, grace, chesed, which is the name of our place, which is a covenant devotion, and walk halak, in purity with your God. And this is for the last 2,000 years because there's been no sacrificial system. And you're going to say, well, if we have the sacrificial system, we're going to re-crucify Yeshua. No. I'll take care of that as soon as we're done with this section. Okay, so now we're moving on to that part, which is we know that Yeshua is the ultimate high head Cohen for us, and so he's the high priest. But Paul was operating with the Gentiles, and he did offer sacrifices after Yeshua resurrected. So let's study those and see what you think, and contrast all of this. And plus, since you know about the offerings, you'll understand more of what I'm going to be explaining. Okay, so Sha'ul. He's here in Acts 21, and people are thrilled that he's coming back to Jerusalem to talk to the disciples. So in Jerusalem, the brothers received us warmly. The next day, Sha'ul and the rest of us went to meet Yaakov, who is the half-brother of Jesus. He's running the show. He's the big guy in Jerusalem. And he didn't believe in Yeshua when Yeshua was alive, but he did after that. So he runs everything because he is the half-brother of Yeshua. And all the elders, so the other guys are there. Okay, after greeting them, Sha'ul described in detail each of the things God had done among the Gentiles through his efforts. On hearing it, they praised God, but they also said to him, you see, brother, how many tens of thousands of believers there are among the Judeans, and they're all zealous for the Torah. Now, what they have been told about you is that you are teaching all the Jews living among the Goyim to apostatize from Moses and telling them not to have the circumcision for their sons and not to follow the traditions of the Torah. So he's anti-Torah, they're saying. Paul has to cover this somehow. So what then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. So do what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a Nazir vow. Okay, so that's the vow where you can't cut your hair and you can't drink grapes or eat grapes or grape juice or anything like that. Okay, so they're under a vow. So we have these 4 men. Take them with you, be purified with them, and pay the expenses connected with having their heads shaved at the end of 7 days. Then everyone will know that there is nothing to these rumors which they have heard about you, but that, on the contrary, you yourself stay in line and keep the Torah. Okay, let's prove it and see if it happens. However, in regard to the Goyim who have come to trust you in Yeshua, we all joined in writing them a letter with our decision that we should abstain from that which has been sacrificed to idols, from blood, from things strangled, and fornication. These are the Noachide laws. Now, I'll get into that this week, so you'll have one more message on that, because there are many people coming out right now and screaming strange things about the Noachide laws. They don't know what they're talking about, and they're trying to get attention. So I'll cover this in an intelligent way, and also I'll cover it with Mark Biltz, who agrees with me on this. That the Orthodox Jews that I know laugh at this. They don't even read that particular section of the Talmud. Okay, so the next day Sha'ul took the men, purified himself along with them, and entered the temple to give notice of when the period of purification would be finished, and the offering would have to be made for each of them. That's after 7 days. So what did he do? According to Numbers 6:13, this is what he had to do. This is keeping Torah. You're saying, but this is crucifying Jesus. No, it's not. You don't understand the sacrificial system, and Paul kept it here. Now, if he would have had a problem with sacrifices after Yeshua was on the cross and resurrected, then he would have said something and not done this. But obviously, Paul kept the Torah because the sacrificial system is a precursor to Yeshua, and it's also a look back. It's a remembrance of Yeshua. So this is the law from the Nazir. When his period of consecration is over, the 7 days, he is to be brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting, where he will present his offering to Adonai, 1 male lamb in its first year without defect as a burnt offering. Ola, remember I told you about that? 1 female lamb. Those are more expensive. In its first year without defect as a sin offering. That's kata, okay? 1 ram without defect as peace offerings. That's a zavak shalamim. That's that barbecue. A basket of matzah. Loaves made of fine flour mixed with olive oil, unleavened wafers, spread with olive oil, and their grain offering. That's a minka, and their drink offerings. So he had to bring those, and he brought those, and he didn't say anything like, no, I'm re-crucifying Jesus. No, he didn't say that, because he understood that these are pictures. These are types and shadows of Yeshua's sacrifice. And so the sacrifices ended, but they will start again, because you can see it here that Paul did not question this, did not complain. He kept this Torah exactly. So if you have any questions about what about the sacrifices, Daniel Lancaster, a friend of mine, wrote this book, What About the Sacrifices, many years ago. I tend to buy them by the 10 and 20 pack and hand them out to people, because everybody goes, oh, you're re-crucifying Jesus. No, you're really not. So just be aware that this book will help explain it to you. You can buy them in bulk if you want to and hand them out to people. They really, really help you to understand what's going on. This guy I'll cover this week. This guy has gone bonkers lately about the Noachide. So we'll cover that. It's just being nice. And he doesn't seem to have that capacity. He just has to scream all the time and go crazy over everything. So I'd like to thank you for this time, and hopefully you learned something today. And thank you very much. God bless.